Hey, it's A Helmet Collector here, and today's video we're going to take a look at the large group items I purchased at the MAX show this year. So I've been an intermittent attender of MAX since 2019. The MAX show is the Military Antiques Extravaganza, and it occurs in Pennsylvania every year in September. It used to be held in Monroeville. Past couple of years it's been held in York, PA. And a couple friends and I generally go out, we look at the show, and, we're all looking for different things. So my buddy Readout Production, he's looking for mix of like earlier American history kind of stuff. He picked up a lot of Span Am stuff this year that you might have seen in the thumbnail. Another friend of mine is more interested in firearms, things like that. He had the magazine pouch that was in the thumbnail as well. But the rest of those items that were on the table were mine. Got a pretty good group this year of death cards, documents, photos, books, a couple other miscellaneous odds and ends. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So the first book I got here is actually a new one. It just came out, I believe. And this is The Kaiser's Pirates, From China to Newport News. The Odyssey of the German commerce raider SMS Prinz Eitel Friedrich, told through the only first-hand daily account to survive World War I, and the unlikely story of its author during 9 months of intense yet bloodless combat from China to Easter Island and on to a Virginia beer party. So apparently the SMS Prinz Eitel Friedrich was converted in China into a commerce raider, and for 9 months they prowled the seas. They sank, I believe, 11 vessels. And the crazy thing was they never killed anybody. They would approach this vessel because they were a commerce raider. They didn't look like a warship. They would board them, they would inspect their cargo, and then they would take what they needed to continue on their journey, bring the crew and passengers over as prisoners, and then sink the vessel. And yeah, apparently this is part a historical analysis by the author, and then part just the actual diary of one of the sailors on board the ship. Apparently he was working in the engine room, which also means it's a nice enlisted men's account and not so much a account from like an officer or something like that. But yeah, very cool, very affordable book. I'm very much looking forward to reading it. But yeah, I'm very excited. They really sold it when we were talking to the person at the table, and I'm very much looking forward to it. It's just a cool story. Commerce raiders during World War I are really neat. I have a book somewhere, I believe it was SMS Wolf, that was another commerce raider or something similar to that. But yeah, very interesting. Moving on here, I got a couple books on the 2nd Infantry Division in World War I. So 2nd Division, American Expeditionary Forces in France, 1917-1919. Really good account here, which I will eventually get around to reading. And then this is kind of a neat book. So this is actually the medals earned by members of the division in World War I. So it has just a listing here of people and then the awards they won. So, for example, at the top of the page here, Robert J. Lawler was a commander of the medical detachment, 2nd Division, and then got the NC, the SSM with 3 OLC. I don't know what any of these abbreviations are, actually. French Croix de Guerre, I know that one with Palm. But yeah, it's literally just every member of the division and their accompanying awards, which is cool. So if you ever need to research, it's always good to have research material because, especially for people of my generation, there's kind of a thought that you can find everything you need to know online. I have found that is not true. When you get into the very obscure corners of history, you need stuff that's just not available online. That's why I buy those unit histories from Germany, because I need them to really understand what was going on at the time of soldiers' death. And when I saw this, I kind of knew I had to pick it up. So this is a roster for the 2nd Marine Division, 4th Brigade. And this is literally just everybody in the brigade, just an entire list of every single member. And this list probably exists somewhere online, but now I have a hard copy, so if I ever needed to look at that, I can. And these kind of like binders, like 3-ring binders of printed material, were really big, it seems like in like the 90s, early 2000s, back in the early days of the internet. Because, a lot of collectors wanted to have that hard copy resource. So they would find these websites, they print out all of this stuff. I have another binder of just all of this tank information that was printed off some defunct website in like 2003. So you never know. It's always good to have stuff like this, have a backup. And I'm not sure if that list exists online anywhere. It probably does, but still kind of a neat find. And moving on here, got this really nice U.S. Navy Sun and Service flag. I believe this is World War I era. So, Sun and Service flag, if you had a son serving in the military during World War I and World War II, you would hang a flag up in your window so that the neighbors knew that, oh, their son's off at the war. And if they were unfortunately killed during the war, you would replace the blue star that was on there with a gold star families. And during World War I, at least, I'm not sure, I haven't seen it as much during World War II, but during World War I, it was very common to have very specialized Sun and Service flags. In this case, having U.S. Navy on here. I've seen them for the Marine Corps. I've seen them for the Tank Corps, machine gun companies, engineers. They all kind of have these really neat individual designs. So this is a pretty cheaply made flag, I'd say. This probably wasn't super expensive back when it was made. I actually got a pretty good deal on it this show. I really like Sun and Service flags, especially those unique ones. I've got a few in the collection. Next up, we have a stack of letters here. So one of the dealers that I always like visiting, because they have great stuff, the price is very reasonable. They stopped me while I was digging through their booth and said, hey, we got this box of letters here that came from a friend of theirs who has unfortunately passed away. He was a big letter collector. And they hadn't gone through it. All they had to go off was the notes that the collector had actually stuck to the different letters. So I spent a while digging through them. I put together a pile. We worked out a price. And there's some really interesting letters in here. There's some good combat stuff as well. So this letter, for example, driving a truck at night without lights, sees a German plane down 250 yards away. And I've read through some of these, just really, really high level. And there's some really good stuff. Yeah, Armistice Day at the front, French candy. He did not like French candy, by the way. He thought it was awful. This pack I didn't actually go through. I just know it talks about the armistice and cooties. Cooties being the AEF reference to basically any of the unpleasant illnesses and lice and such you could get in the trenches. Now, this is a really cool grouping. So this is a grouping of letters from a German officer to his cousin in New York City that were written in the 1920s. And there's a picture of him during the war that he sent over. And yeah, he's not very happy in the post-war environment. Obviously, Germany post-World War I is not a great place to be. Can't talk. Especially this line here. We all are pretty well, in spite of all efforts to starve us. Even my good old white horse Pasha is nearly in peacetime condition. When the American did not supply our enemies with munitions, war would long be over. So, yeah, he's complaining about America's involvement in the war. It's kind of a sad grouping of letters because his cousin, the gentleman here, his cousin Victoria Adler, her husband dies, and she's staying at St. Luke's Home, which is a home for the destitute, I believe, in New York. His English is actually pretty good, though. It's nice that we're able to read them just like that. But yeah, her brother Gustav was the one kind of taking care of her, and he died after apparently years of failed businesses. But yeah, the officer here was Edler, O. Edler. And apparently he owned this firm here. So I'm hoping I might be able to actually research him. And a lot of the letters he talks about sending her money to take care of her because she didn't have any, male relatives that could support her. And, he was doing fairly well. I mean, again, he's living in Germany post-World War I, but he's able to send her $30, $50 to help kind of sustain her. There's actually like a 10,000 mark bill in one of these letters. So really kind of an interesting group, and not something I've ever really seen before. Oh yeah, Alan here survived the sinking of the Tuscania on the way to France. He actually mentions in this he's not really religious, but he kind of thinks that maybe God was sparing him for something there. This is kind of a sad letter grouping. Apparently, yeah, Miss Edith Ferner here wrote to this guy. I can't remember his name. Yeah, Charles Allen Hurd, who was serving with the 305th Sanitary Train at a field hospital. And she was asking about her son, who she'd received a telegraph that he'd been killed. And basically, this guy's like, I did know your son. I was not with him when it happened, but I know that it had been reported to me that he'd been killed. It's possible that he may have been wounded somewhere. I will look to make sure, for certain. And, of course, Johnstown, PA is right in my neck of the woods. So I'm going to definitely do research on this. I'm assuming, based off the way this letter is written, that her son was killed. It's possible that his body is still over in France. Possible he's been repatriated here to PA. So if he is still in PA, when I do eventually get around to researching that letter, I will try to make my way out to his grave for that video. We have another truck driver here. Yeah, he talks about souvenirs. He's writing to his girlfriend. He's like, yeah, I've got a bunch of souvenirs I want to send you, but I'm kind of afraid they're going to get stolen or lost on the way, but I also don't want to keep carrying them with me because if I have to, like, abandon my stuff somewhere, I'm going to lose all of them. All he says is she's going to like them and that they're very heavy, so I don't know what that means. It could be anything. Kind of like a neat letter there. Oh, this is kind of a neat little booklet that was given out to soldiers going over to France talking about don't talk too much, the way that you write your letters. I love the back here. If you are captured, don't remember any more than you can help. Try particularly to forget organizations and the places in which they are stationed. Every bit of military information you give to your captors is a danger to you and to the comrades that you have left behind to fight your battles. The only information which the rules of land warfare compel you to give is your name and rank, by command of Major General Hodges, GM Peak, Major Field Artillery, NA Adjutant. Just super cool. There's a couple little miscellaneous odds and ends there. We also have this nice little I've arrived safely overseas from a member of the 302nd or 362nd supply chain. So that's kind of cool. You would sign these cards. They would hold them until your boat actually was confirmed to have arrived in France, and then they'd send them out to your families just so they knew that you were okay. You see a lot of that for World War I. There's a lot of, like, form cards where it's like, especially from, like, the YMCA and the Red Cross would hand those out, where it's like, you check the box, like, I am well, I need you to send me tobacco and socks, you know, just, like, really quick check marks. Because sometimes it's hard to find the words to write letters when you're over there, especially if you don't have a lot of time. Oh, this is a cool one. Talk about finding Germans gassed in a dugout. I also love this letterhead from the Union of Franco-American soldiers there with the polo there, or polo. Can't remember how it's pronounced. But yeah, he talks about they found like a cave with like 3 dead Germans in it. And they were all sat around a table with like poker cards still like in their hands. And they'd all been killed by gas. So he was saying that the gas must have entered the bunker really quickly. Maybe the alarm didn't sound. And they just didn't even have time to react before they were killed. So really interesting stuff there. And this one, I went through a few of these letters. Training a captured German artillery piece on the Germans. That was an interesting one. He was talking about how some of his comrades had actually found a German heavy artillery piece that had been left behind during a German retreat, and they just swung it around and started shelling the retreating Germans with it. Pretty interesting stuff there. And hopefully I get around to making videos on a lot of these eventually. Yeah, this one, he was writing out saying he was wounded to his family, a member of the 110th Infantry Machine Gun Company. And he was, I think he was shot in the arm and like 4 places in the leg. He was pretty badly wounded. He was in hospital for months. Oh, this one, talking about combat on the last day of the war here by this Sergeant Kincaid. Yeah, so Kincaid was part of an infantry company, or an infantry platoon, that was ordered on November 11th to try to take part of the German line. They went out. The artillery bombardment that was supposed to support them did not occur. There was heavy fog. And when they actually got up to the wire, they couldn't get through it. And of the 20 men in their company, I believe it was 7 were killed and like 5 were wounded. It was really bad. And after the armistice went into effect at 11 a.m., they actually went out, talked to the Germans, got the bodies of their friends back, and actually buried them. But he basically was talking about how it really kind of soured the entire experience at the end of the war for him. So really, really good stuff there. Oh yeah, he sees a German airplane over their trenches at one point in this one. I also love all the different like letter designs here. This active service envelope. Oh, this is a cool one. Talking about registering for selective service. Is issued by the War Department. August 26, 1918. Kind of a neat little piece there. Same with this one. This little ribbon here. My country has called me. I go to make democracy safe throughout the world. Very cool. And the last letter here. Oh, yeah, about being chilled, now happy to survive. So this was a letter written to his father for Christmas of 1918 by Corporal Brenniger here. And basically he talks about how, like, he's happy the war is over. He's happy he survived. He talks about, like, you know, the fact that when he was being shelled, he was just sure that he was going to die every time the next shell came in, and how lucky he was not to have been killed. He also talks about having his dad kiss his sweetheart for him, and that's the reason that she decided to stay while he was overseas, which was a little weird. But yeah, really cool. I love all these old letters, and even though they're all in cursive, thankfully I actually did learn that in school, so I'm able to read them. It takes me a little bit of time, but, you know, kind of go through those. So yeah, really cool pieces. There are definitely some interesting videos in the future. So moving on here, I did pick up one Veripass from a photo dealer, the one that I usually get stuff from at Max. We can see here, this is one for the 57th Infantry Division and later the 8th Jaeger Division. For Obergefreiter Alexander Sherman, who served in the 157th Artillery Regiment of the 57th, and later in the 337th Artillery Regiment and Geberg's Artillery Regiment 8 of the 8th Jaeger Division. Was awarded the Ostmetal and the Black Wound Badge, was in the Polish campaign in France, and was wounded on September 24th, 1942, and died the next day. And the back here actually has a little bit of nice printout of his service. Now, the reason I picked this one up in particular, because the seller had a ton of Veripasses, some of which were very interesting, one of which was talking about, like, fighting around Auschwitz in the Polish campaign. Really interesting stuff. The reason I picked this one up, of course, is because the 57th Infantry Division is what the List Regiment was serving with. So I did not find anything specifically about the List Regiment at Max, but this was the closest that I got. So when I saw the 57th ID, I had to pick that up. Oh, look at that. Security on the demarcation line. That's cool. I still have not translated any of the, like, I think I have 3 Veripasses now, maybe 4. I really do need to get around to translating those and doing a video, because they're super interesting. There's a lot of neat info that you can find in there. So also moving on here, we had just a miscellaneous bag of vet bringbacks. This must have all come out of the same estate. I actually bought it without looking at what was in here, just because I thought it was relatively cheap. I thought it'd be kind of fun. We do have a couple of nice marks here. We have 1,000 marks. Yeah, April 1910. I love the design on these two. You got, like, the Prussian eagle on the back of this one. There's a 50 Reichsmark note. One's World War II era. And then we have this one here, which is 100,000 marks. I think this is an inflation note, actually. But yeah, pretty neat there. And then there's some, like, postcards in here. Cathedral at Reims, and then part of our quarters. So apparently they were stationed in this building at some point. A couple souvenir postcards from Chateau Salins, all in color, which is pretty nice. None of these are really written on, unfortunately. Oh, they're still all hooked together. Look at that. And then, yeah, this AA patch, which I can't remember what this stands for. I know I've seen it before, but off the top of my head, I can't remember. And a couple miscellaneous medals and pins and things here. So this one is celebrating something in 1936. I don't know what this is. I'll have to look that up later. We also have a couple of religious medals here. St. Hubert. And then we have what appears to be some kind of necklace or bracelet as well. Probably a necklace. But yeah, kind of like a neat little grouping. Unfortunately, nothing that can really be researched, but be able to at least keep it together. So moving on, this was actually not a bad year for death cards. There were still a lot of overpriced death cards. dealers asking $15 for basic death cards. But I found a few that were 5, found some that were 10 that I maybe overpaid a little bit for, but, you know, some of them were interesting enough that I was willing to do that. So we'll go through some of those. I also have some photos here. Let's go through the photos first, actually, because they're on top. So I only bought a couple of photos from my photo dealer this year because, A, I bought that Veripass, but also another friend of mine who collects photos was not at Max this year, and he asked me to pick some up for him, so I was mostly shopping the table for him. Now, I did get 2 KV tank photos. Now, for those of you who have listened to my rants before, I've been looking for a photo of the Monster of Rosenier for years, which is a KV tank that held up, oh gosh, was it the 6th Panzer Division? It held up an entire Panzer Division for a day during Barbarossa. And there is some debate on if it was a KV-1 or a KV-2 because no confirmed photos of it have ever been found or identified. And given the combat account that is in the general's unit history, I kind of know roughly what kind of combat damage I should be looking for. So this first one here, I'll take it out of the sleeve so we can get rid of the glare. We have a pretty badly damaged KV-1. It's got a lot of strikes to the turret here. So one of the things with the KV tank that was destroyed at Rosenier, the Monster of Rosenier, is that a satchel charge had been thrown onto the tank barrel and had blown up and essentially dented the barrel. Unfortunately, it's cut off, so I can't see that. The other problem with this one is that this, well, A, they say it's a destroyed T-34, which is wrong. But they also say September of 1942, which obviously is later than what we'd be looking for, but it's possible this tank's been sitting here for a year. Because it's like something in Shilgre, which I don't know what that's an abbreviation for. But that is a potential candidate, just because of the number of strikes it's taken and the damage. Possible. Now, the other tank here is another maybe, if I take it out of the sleeve. This is another KV-1 with multiple strikes to the back. Now, they did try flanking the Monster at one point, and I believe did hit it in the engine. Of course, it wasn't moving, so that didn't really do anything. Unfortunately, again, I can't see the front of the turret, and there's not really a caption here. So, again, a maybe. I would say this is a less strong maybe than the first photo, but I am still searching for the Monster of Rosenier. So, if anybody ever finds a photo, please let me know. I'd just love to see it at this point. Another photo here. This is kind of a really cool one, in my opinion. Taken from the back of an artillery piece being towed along a road here in France. In fact, it's actually labeled, Verdun, something, and Toul on the road there. But yeah, really cool. You can see the national shield on the helmet of this guy here. You can see all the other half-tracks with the unit markings on them. Super, just really awesome photo. I really love that. And then the last photo here I paid a lot for. But actually, this is the most expensive photo I bought. But it's so cool. So this is a Panzer III and a whole bunch of soldiers pulled up here. And if you look at the back of the tank, we have a divisional marking. That is the marking for the 281st Sicherungs Division. So those of you who watch my death card videos know that I'm really interested in these Sicherungs units. These were security divisions. They were generally made up of older guys. They weren't really supposed to be doing frontline combat work. But during that first winter of the Eastern Front, where everything starts to go sideways, a lot of these guys, and especially for the next couple years, are just acting as kind of like firefighting units. They're just getting thrown into the line wherever they're needed. They take a lot of casualties, but I've never found a photo that I could tie specifically to a Sicherungs unit, and this is just a stellar one. I love the tank here with the helmets hanging off the turret. Everybody at attention there. I haven't had the chance to look at this too closely. There might be like some interesting weapons and things in there. Just super, super neat. Probably my favorite photo that I've gotten out of the show. So a couple more things before we get in the death cards here. Kind of an interesting photo of an Italian soldier, and a reason I bought this on the back, it's for a member of the 11th Infantry Regiment, and was taken September 14th, 1943. So I don't know too much about the Italian military in World War II. I mean, I know a little bit, but that'll be kind of interesting to research. I also got this nice U.S. Navy postcard sent from the training center there. Kind of neat. So going into the death cards here, we have a few. I picked this one up just because it was an interesting name. This is for Leopold Panzer, who was actually a member of the Kriegsmarine. But yeah, I just thought his name was interesting. His name's Panzer. Kind of cool. And he died post-war in 1948 in March as a result of war injuries, it looks like. And he was actually serving in the war during the years of 1944-45, so late war. The next one we have here, this is one of the ones I think I overpaid for, but this is for Karl Anker, who died on February 8th, 1944 at the age of 36. The reason I picked this one up is we have a nice full, almost full panel photo of him. You see his bayonet there, so kind of an interesting one. Next one we have here is for Mr. Hans Dar, who had the Silver Honor Medal and was a captain in the reserve, veteran of the First World War, and also served from 1939 to 1943. Bearer of the Silver Front Spange for the Iron Cross Second Class, which is that there. That is the continuation clasp. So basically, if you were awarded the Iron Cross Second Class in World War I, and you got a second one during World War II, you could wear that spange on the ribbon. Super cool. And he was killed March 1st, 1944, at the age of 53. Looks like maybe at a training school, so that might not be a combat death. But yeah, really cool card. You don't see a continuation spange on a lot of death cards for obvious reasons. Got another card here, not in the best shape, but this is for Adolf Storfinger, who was a fighter of Geberjäger Regiment, died March 11th, 1943 during an assault on a hill in Tunisia. So, pretty cool African campaign there. And he died at the age of 34. So, admittedly, I'm not super familiar with late Africa Corps stuff. Actually, to be honest with you, I think I bought this just because it was a Geberjäger card. I didn't even look at that, so that's neat. Yeah, like I said, not the best condition, but hopefully I'm able to find some information on him. So moving on here, I'll save this card for last because it is by far the most interesting card that I bought at the show, as you'll see in a moment. Next one here is for Emil Verbruggen Franz. Born in 1906. I haven't translated all of this, but this is similar to a lot of cards I've seen. He was killed by the Nazis April 9th, 1945 in Magdeburg camp by the SS. So he was a victim of the Third Reich and was executed. I've seen a few of these cards over the years. I have a few in my collection. I just haven't gotten around to researching yet, but you don't see them very often, so I was really happy to have picked that up. Now, next up, we have the card for Simon Angerer here, who was a fighter in an infantry regiment, died at the age of 21 from shrapnel during an assault in the East. And the reason I picked this one up is on his photo here, you can just see the top of his sword that he had taken the photo with. So I thought that was kind of neat. So next up here, we have Michael Sturmhofer, Obergefreiter and Grenadier Regiment, bearer of the Infantry Assault Badge, the Wound Badge of the Eastern Front Medal, died February 28th, 1944 in the East at the age of 35. Yep. And painted on uniform here, which is the reason I bought this one. I had a great conversation with the dealer, actually, because he had a bunch of, he didn't have them with him, I don't think, or else he would have shown them to me and I probably would have bought some. But he had a lot of the actual metal tags off of the old wooden crosses that used to be in like the World War I cemeteries. And the reason that he had them is that basically when those cemeteries transitioned over to concrete crosses, in I believe the 70s, they took all of the wooden crosses with those tags, essentially threw them in a pile and burned them. So he had apparently figured out where they burned them and had actually dug up hundreds of these metal tags. And I believe I actually bought one from him at a different show. But had a great conversation with him, gave him my card, so hopefully he sees the channel at some point. Next card here is for Hermann Schotter, who was an Oberwachtmeister in the Schutzpolizei, who died February 12th, 1942 in the East at the age of 33. Then we have another card here for Paul Pennings. We have a really nice biography card basically here. And it looks like he was killed in June of 1941 And it looks like they're sending this out in June of 1942. So bought this just because it's a biography card, and I really like those. But the other thing, I didn't realize till I bought this because it was folded over in the case, is that look at this gorgeous full-color backplate here. You just don't see those very often. So that really made me excited when I saw that. Next one here is a World War I card for Joachim Landherr, who was a soldier in Reserve Infantry Regiment number 16 in the Mine Thrower Battalion, or Mine Thrower Detachment. Born in 1899, died July 19th, 1918 on the Marne. So this is Reserve Infantry Regiment number 16. This is not Reserve Bavarian Infantry Regiment number 16. So the Bavarian Reserve Infantry Regiment is the one that Hitler served in during World War I. However, there was just a regular Reserve Infantry Regiment 16, so the two are actually not related. So I believe he was in the one that Hitler was not serving in, but still kind of an interesting card. And also the reason I bought this one is this gorgeous color backplate here of the Madonna. Gosh, beautiful. And I don't have a ton of World War I cards, so I do try to pick up at least a few every now and then. So next up here we have Johann Stiglmaier, bearer of the Wound Badge, who died on January 7th, 1945 in the Southeast at the age of 20. So this is kind of an interesting one because to me it looks like he's wearing his Wound Badge like really high up, because that's normally where you'd mount like an EK1, and normally the Wound Badge would be lower on the pocket. I don't know if there's a stipulation if you don't have an EK1, you can wear the Wound Badge further up. I'd be curious to hear what you guys have to say on that below, but that's kind of why I bought that one. I just thought it was a little odd. So we have a few other death cards left, but they're in a case. So the last loose one that I have here is that really interesting one I was telling you about. So I found this in, can't remember if it was in a pile at one dealer, if it was a booklet at another. But anyway, I saw this. I was like, huh, that's kind of an odd photo there. And when I got it and looked at it, picked it up, and it said, Ad Turlings here, soldier in the 1st Company of the 1st Regiment of Jaegers, died September 23rd, 1947 in Sumatra. And I was like, huh, that's really weird. So I bought this, and I was thinking maybe it was French Foreign Legion, because I know a lot of guys post-World War II joined the Legion. But what I actually found out is this is a Dutch card. And basically, Odd here was a member of the Dutch military in their operations in Indonesia post-World War II. So basically, after World War II, Indonesia declares its independence. The Dutch are like, you can't do that. And there's a couple pretty violent police actions that take place over like the next 5 years. From a couple of the sources I was looking at, my light research, like 5,000 Dutch soldiers are killed. About 100,000 Indonesians die over the course of those couple of years. It's really bloody, nasty fighting. But apparently, yeah, that's where Ad was serving when he was killed. Never seen a card for that conflict before, and it's not one I'm super familiar with. So really, really interesting. I'm definitely looking forward to doing a video on that at some point, though I suspect it's going to be very hard to find sources in English. So this next set of cards here, I actually bought this entire case, and the case is absolutely roached. It's an old Riker box where the lid's been destroyed and the glass is broken and taped back together. But it was a set here. He was selling all these for $5 a piece. I was going to buy two, and he's like, I'll make you a deal on all of them. So the two I was interested in really were these two here because the guys had awards. The first one for Aloy Hoggle, who's an Oberfighter in Grenadier Regiment, bearer of the Iron Cross 2nd Class, the Infantry Assault Badge, and the Wound Badge and the Eastern Front Medal. And we can actually see that those medals have been painted on there, which is super cool. And he was killed October 5th, 1943 in the heavy fighting in the East, age 23 and a half. And then the other card here was for Peter Fraunhofer, who's an Unteroffizier in the Infantry Regiment, bearer of the Iron Cross 2nd Class, the Wound Badge, and the Eastern Front Medal. Again, also looks like they're painted on there. Possibly by the same person, because that was Pfeffenhausen, where that was printed. Oh yeah, look at that, Pfeffenhausen. Yeah, L. Wurstel Pfeffenhausen. I wonder if they had an in-house guy that was doing that. Very cool. I also love an HCOM 209 backing. It's one of the really neat ones. But yeah, so those two are the reason I bought this. I haven't actually looked at any of these other ones, so we're going to do that now. See what else we got here. We have Josef Erl, who was an Oberkreutzer in Artillery Regiment, bearer of the Eastern Front Medal, veteran of several campaigns, or all campaigns. Died September 20th, 1943. In the heavy fighting in the East at the age of 26. A lot of these have that tape on them. I'm guessing they were taped into an album at some point. Next one here is Ferdinand Partzer, bearer of the Wound Badge, who fell on November 13th, 1944, in the age 24 in Hungary. Oh, beautiful HCOM 309 backing there. All right, let's go through the rest of these. So the next one we have is for Franz Limmer, Obergefreiter in Infantry Regiment, who died the hero's death in the fighting in Kharkov on May 13th, 1942, at the age of 30. Interestingly, somebody's penciled in a 5.6 around his name. I'm wondering if he was in the 56th Infantry Regiment. Have to look that up later. Next up is for Paul Wurstel, who was a Gefreiter in Grenadier Regiment, who was wounded on March 10th, 1944. In the East, died 2 days later at the age of 38. We do have a photo of him there. Oh, are these all by... Look, there's another one by Wurstel. Yeah, so is the one up here for Joseph. Interesting. So we have... Hold on, these two weren't. This one is by somebody in Frontenhausen. This one's unmarked. Very cool. I do have kind of a weird memory when it comes to death card printers. Some of them just have really signature kind of ways that they lay out their cards. So the next one here is for Josef Rosel, Oberschütze in Infantry Regiment, who died on October 23rd, 1941, near Birakovo in Russia. Nice photo of him there in his glasses. And the last card here, it's the only one actually wrapped up in plastic. Josef Groff, who was an Unteroffizier and a board mechanic in a Flieger Transportstaffel, bearer of the Iron Cross Second Class, who on November 25th, 1944, died in a tank attack in the West at the age of 28 in Sarsburg. So really cool here. Luftwaffe personnel transferred into one of the Feld units. Very, very neat. I will say that photo looks a bit off. I'm actually going to open this one real quick and just take a look at it under the jeweler's loop. Yeah, it definitely looks like an original card. I'm wondering if it got wet at some point, because some of the ink is a bit smudged in places. But yeah, pretty interesting one there, so I'll definitely be getting around to researching those in the next decade or so. And I'm probably just going to throw this case out, because like I said, it is completely roached. The guy was like, do you want the case? And I said, sure, and I should have been like, no, I'm good, because I'm just going to throw this out immediately as soon as I put those in the research pile. Oh yeah, this is one of the photos. So my friend that I bought a bunch of photos for, I've got his stack here. We can take a look at them real quick. I won't take them out of the binder because there's a lot of them. But we got another Panzer there. Helmet's hanging off of it. Actually, hold on. Is that the same? Wait just a minute. Hold on. Is that the same? There's no way, right? I think that's the same tank. Oh my gosh. No way. No way. All right, well, he might not be getting this one now. Hold on. That's the same tank. This is the same freaking day. Look at that. Yeah, because you can see the row of barracks over there. That's the... Oh, wow. Huh. I'll be darned. Yeah, that's got to be the same tank, right? I mean, that's like... That's a perfect match. All right, well... Sorry, buddy. I might be keeping that one. I'll talk to you about it after this, but I might be like, hey, so... It turns out that's another view of that same Sickrooks tank. What are the odds? That was so weird. Okay. My hyperfixation coming into play there. All right, so hopefully you can keep the rest of these. So the next one here, Luftwaffe car with unit insignia. I'm not sure which unit that is. A couple officers there. Nice car. Next one here, we have a captured Russian Matilda on a trailer being sent out. Probably sent back to Germany to get looked at and inspected. Have a nice combat photo here. A couple guys hanging out on a ridge while a town's burning off in the distance. This is kind of a neat one. It's just a Panzer running over a truck. It's pretty neat. Next one, we have another tank here taken through some tall grass. Tank number 14, it looks like. Somewhere out in the field. This is a cool one. We have a staff car there with some tactical markings in front of a transport ship of some kind. That'd probably be a good one to research at some point. Got a photo of a Stug here. Loaded up with guys either entering or exiting a barn. Kind of cool. And then the last one is a destroyed BT tank. Kind of off the side of a road here by a ditch. So yeah, pretty interesting. Yeah, he likes tank photos, so I think those are some good ones. Sorry, I'm going to be keeping that other Panzer III photo, though. So I'm literally right after this, I'm going to text and be like, hey, I got to take one of these photos back. He's pretty understanding. I think he'll be fine with that. A couple kind of interesting pieces of paperwork I picked up as well. This is a letter from Terrible Terry Allen to his troops following the atomic bombing, basically saying that they were originally supposed to redeploy to Japan. Now they're going to be Army of Occupation. Basically saying, keep up your training. We're going to be rotating some of you guys home. Nothing specifically about the atomic bombing, but that's, why they were not going to Japan. Terry Allen's pretty famous when it comes to World War II generals. Not as famous as somebody like Patton or Eisenhower, but he's got a stellar combat record, well loved by his troops. There's a great video that the Fat Electrician did on him, I think like a year or two ago. So definitely worth checking that out as well. So the other one here, I'm actually going to take this out of the sleeve so you can enjoy this one in its full glory. Look at this gorgeous comic here from a German officers' school. Look at that. Kriegsofficers, something, November 1942. Just look at that. Look at that stellar design here. The coffee grinder, and unfortunately, this is the only, print. Everything else in here is like a poem, it looks like. So I'll have to translate that eventually. But I bought it just for this killer graphic on the front. That should be a poster. And I love, all the tactical markings along the sides here, the barbed wire frame. Everybody coming through here and getting ground into officers. I love soldier art like that. That's one of the reasons why I like the U.S. shipboard newsletters so much, is because each of those shipboard newsletters has a ton of really neat drawings and comics that the guys were doing. It looks like this one in particular is for the 417th Division, so one that I can't off the top of my head say I'm too familiar with. So the last piece here is a very badly worn Sun and Service flag, but a very interesting one nonetheless. So as we could see here, the guy, when he got home, decorated this with a lot of his pins and his badges and everything. So, of particular interest here, we can see that he was actually awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, which is pretty cool. Unfortunately, no name. We also have a miniature Kreuzwehr, which I think's neat. All we really know about him is that he was an engineer based off the castles there. Apparently, he was a member of the Elks, and it looks like he was a Cub Scout leader at some point. But yeah, unfortunately, no name. Very rough shape, but man, there's a story here, and unfortunately, we just don't know what it is. But this was so cool. As soon as I saw this, I was like, I need to have that, and they made me a pretty good deal on it. So this was the same dealers that I got the letters from. But yes, that was Max 2025. Just a ton of stuff here. I'm not even going to bring it all back into frame. But I guess my thoughts on the Max show. So I think I've talked in previous years that I feel like there's a lot of junk, I guess, at the Max show. There's a lot of stuff that I don't necessarily think is real, especially Third Reich stuff. But this year felt like it was a better mix. Death cards were definitely better this year than they have been in previous years, even though prices are still a little wonky. Is it worth going to the Max show? I'd say so. It's not a show that I really attend every year. It's been starting to be every other year. I still need to make it down to the show of shows in Kentucky as well, so I'll probably do that in early 27 when it goes on. But yeah, I mean, it's worth going to. You can get some good deals. It's always good talking to dealers, especially people that you buy from online that you actually get to then go and interact with in person. My photo dealer in particular, I always love seeing him and talking about some of the good stuff that I bought from him over the past year, because this will go out before the unboxing video that it's in. But I recently got a Veripass for a member of a armored train unit that I got from him. And we were talking, because it was on his website for a while before I bought it. And he's like, yeah, I can't believe that didn't sell, super quickly. I'm like, I know, because armor train stuff's like impossible to find, but whatever. Yeah, great show. As you can see, a lot of cool items. I hope you guys all enjoyed the video. Please leave a comment down below. Love hearing from you. Thank you all for watching. Happy collecting, and I will see you all again very soon.